In June 1560, inside Edinburgh Castle, a woman is dying. Her legs are so swollen that she can no longer lie down. Outside the walls, an English army is camped on Scottish soil. The Scottish lords who once served her have declared her removed from office. And in her final days, she sends for those same lords and asks them to come to her. They come. They sit with her. She asks their forgiveness. Then she asks them to send both the French and the English soldiers out of Scotland and to obey her daughter when she returns. Her name is Mary of Guise. She is the mother of Mary, Queen of Scots. She has governed Scotland for 6 years, and she is 44 years old. How does a French noblewoman end up ruling a kingdom that was never hers? This is the story of Mary of Guise. She is born on November 22nd, 1515, in the castle of the Dukes of Bar, at Bar-le-Duc in Lorraine. She is the eldest of the 12 children of Claude, Duke of Guise, and Antoinette of Bourbon. The Guise family is Catholic, ambitious, and close to the French crown. Her brothers will become some of the most powerful men in France. One will lead the French armies. Another will become Cardinal of Lorraine. As a small child, she is sent to the convent of the Poor Clares at Pont-à-Mousson, where her grandmother, Philippa of Guelders, lives as a nun. She spends part of her childhood inside those walls. She grows unusually tall for her time, reaching about 1 meter 80. When she is around 14, her uncle Antoine, Duke of Lorraine, and her aunt Renée of Bourbon come to visit. They decide the girl is wasted in a convent. They take her away and prepare her for court. In 1531, she appears in public for the first time at the wedding of King Francis I and Eleanor of Austria. She makes a strong impression. She becomes friendly with the king's daughters, including a girl named Madeleine, whose life will later cross hers in a way neither of them can predict. On August 4th, 1534, at the age of 18, she is married at the Louvre to Louis of Orléans, Duke of Longueville, Grand Chamberlain of France. The marriage was arranged by the king. By every surviving account, it works. On October 30th, 1535, she gives birth to a son, Francis. Then, on June 9th, 1537, her husband dies at Rouen. She is 21, a widow, and pregnant. She keeps his last letter for the rest of her life. That letter still exists today in the National Library of Scotland. On August 4th, 1537, she gives birth to their second son, named Louis, after his father. The child does not live long. Within months, 2 kings want to marry her. In Scotland, James V has just lost his wife of 6 months, Madeleine of Valois, the same girl Mary knew at the French court. He wants another French bride to keep Scotland tied to France and protected against England. In England, Henry VIII has just lost Jane Seymour and is looking for a 4th wife. In December 1537, Henry tells the French ambassador in London that he is a big man and has need of a big wife. There is a famous reply attributed to Mary that she may be a big woman but has a very small neck. It is repeated in almost every account of her life. It was written down long afterwards, and there is no proof she ever said it. What is documented is her reluctance. She has just buried a husband and a son. She does not want to leave France, and she does not want to leave her surviving child. Cardinal David Beaton, sent from Scotland to handle the negotiation, writes back that she is strong, of good complexion, and fit to travel. Her family pushes. The French king decides. Francis I chooses James over Henry and has a marriage contract drawn up that gives the King of Scots a dowry of 150,000 livres, as large as if Mary had been born a princess of France. Her mother finds the terms strange because part of her grandson's inheritance has been folded into the payment. The proxy wedding takes place on the 9th of May, 1538 at Château-d'Un. Lord Maxwell stands in for the absent king and brings a diamond ring. Around 2,000 Scots have crossed the sea for the occasion. On June 10th, 1538, Mary sails from Le Havre. She leaves her son Francis behind. He is 3 years old. He is heir to his father's lands and titles, and he has to stay in France with her mother. She will see him only once more in her life. 6 days later, she lands at Crail in Fife. She is received at St. Andrews with pageants and plays, and on the 18th of June, 1538, she and James V are married in person in St. Andrew's Cathedral. The king's mother, Margaret Tudor, sister of Henry VIII, writes to her brother in July that she expects the new queen to prove a wise princess. Mary settles into a country whose language she does not speak. She goes hunting with the king in the Highlands. She brings French masons, a French painter, and craftsmen to work on the royal palaces. Her household includes a fool and a woman of short stature, both dressed in green. In August 1539, she and James make a pilgrimage by ship to the Isle of May, to a shrine believed to help women conceive. She keeps a written record of the pilgrimages she makes in Scotland. On the 22nd of February 1540, she is crowned queen at Holyrood Abbey. A new crown is made from Scottish gold. 30 guns are fired from Edinburgh Castle, and the king's gunners set off fireworks. 3 months later, on 22nd May 1540, she gives birth to a son at St. Andrews. He is named James, Duke of Rothesay. On 12th April 1541, a second son is born and baptized, Robert, Duke of Albany. Then, in the last days of April 1541, both boys die within about 14 hours of each other. James is not yet 1 year old. Robert is 9 days old. Her mother writes from France that the couple are young and should hope for more children, and blames a change of wet nurse and overfeeding. The following year, war comes again. On November 24th, 1542, a Scottish army is broken at Solway Moss. On December 8th, 1542, at Linlithgow Palace, Mary of Guise gives birth to a daughter. The child is named Mary. 6 days later, on December 14th, 1542, James V dies at Falkland Palace. He is 30 years old. The baby is now Queen of Scots. She is 6 days old. Her mother is 27, married twice, widowed twice, and has buried 4 of her 5 children. Government does not pass to her. Parliament gives the regency to James Hamilton, Earl of Arran, the next man in line to the throne. And in England, Henry VIII sees an opening. He wants the infant queen married to his son Edward, which would place Scotland under English control within a generation. In March of 1543, the English diplomat Ralph Sadler comes to Linlithgow to see the child. Arran has been spreading a rumor that the baby is sickly and unlikely to survive. Mary of Guise has her daughter unwrapped from her swaddling and shown to him. Sadler reports back that she is as fine a child as he has seen and likely to live. In the same conversation, the Queen Mother tells him that Arran is a simple man and that she can find out his whole intent without difficulty. She is already working the English envoy against the regent. In July 1543, she moves with the baby to Stirling Castle, which is easier to defend. The Treaty of Greenwich, promising the child to Prince Edward, is signed and then rejected by the Scottish Parliament in December. On September 9th, 1543, in the Chapel Royal at Stirling, the 9-month-old Mary is crowned Queen of Scots. Henry VIII responds with force. The campaign that follows is remembered as the Rough Wooing. English armies come north repeatedly. In 1544, Edinburgh and its port at Leith are burned. Border abbeys are wrecked. Crops are destroyed. Mary of Guise does not leave. In 1544, she makes an open attempt to take the regency from Arran and fails, and is instead placed on a council to advise him. She builds a following among the nobility by patronage, by pensions, and by exploiting Scottish anger at the English raids. She also keeps writing to her son in France. In March 1545, he sends her a piece of string, cut to his own height, so she can see how much he has grown. The following year, he sends her his portrait. On 10th September 1547, the Scots are defeated at the Battle of Pinkie. It is one of the worst military disasters in Scottish history. French troops arrive to fill the gap, and her position strengthens rather than weakens. She goes to the front herself. She has a spear painted for her royal standard. In July 1548, at the siege of Haddington, her party comes within range of the English guns, and 16 people of her entourage are killed around her. She survives. Afterwards, she gives one of her own gunners, Andro Stratoun, a reward of a month's wages, £4 Scots. Then she makes the decision that defines the rest of her life. On July 7th, 1548, at Haddington Abbey, the Scottish Parliament agrees the Treaty of Haddington. The child queen will marry the Dauphin Francis, heir to the French throne, and France will defend Scotland. In August 1548, the 5-year-old Mary sails from Dumbarton to France. Her mother plans to travel with her part of the way and then go on pilgrimage. Instead, she turns back for a council meeting in Edinburgh. She has sent her only surviving child out of the country to keep her alive. She stays behind to hold the country for her. The war grinds on. On Christmas Day, 1549, she is at Stirling negotiating for more French guns. On 6th February 1550, she watches the assault on English-held Broughty Castle from a position across the Tay. The garrison surrenders days later. Writing about the English withdrawal, she notes that they left nothing behind them but the plague. On 24th March 1550, Scotland is included in the Treaty of Boulogne and the fighting stops. With peace, she can finally travel. She leaves Scotland on the 6th of September 1550 and lands at Dieppe. On the 1st of October, she rides in a great procession at Rouen with her daughter, behind soldiers carrying banners showing the Scottish fortresses recovered from the English. She has brought a large retinue of Scottish earls, lords, and bishops with her. Historians read this as deliberate. She is showing the Scottish nobility what French friendship is worth and binding them to her personally. The visit lasts more than a year, and it is not only ceremony. At Amboise in April 1551, she learns of a plot to poison her daughter. The suspect, a Scot named Robert Stewart, is picked up in London and handed over to the French. She spends the whole visit pressing Henry II for money for Scotland and for better terms in her daughter's marriage settlement. An English observer at Tours, John Mason, writes with contempt that the Dowager of Scotland has made the entire court weary of her, that she begs constantly for herself, and that the king would gladly be rid of her. It is a hostile account of a woman doing her job. Then, on the 22nd of September 1551, while she is traveling towards Dieppe to sail home, her son Francis dies at Amiens. He is 15. She had left him as a 3-year-old in 1538 and had only just found him again. In October 1551, she crosses England and meets the young Edward VI at Whitehall. He gives her a diamond ring that had once belonged to Catherine Parr. She reaches Scotland in November 1551. Cannon are hauled up to Edinburgh Castle to fire salutes for her return. She will never see her daughter again. Now she begins the slow work of taking power. Arran is bought out. The French crown gives him the Duchy of Châtel-Hérault, an income and a title in exchange for stepping aside. She writes to the French ambassador in London in cipher. She builds support among the lords. On the 12th of April, 1554, at a meeting of Parliament, Mary of Guise is made Regent of Scotland. Her 11-year-old daughter sends congratulations from France, addressed to the Queen, my mother. She governs for 6 years, and she governs actively. In July 1554, she travels to Jedburgh and holds a court of justice there for a fortnight, trying to shut down the long feud between the Scot and Kerr border families, escorted by armed horsemen. In the autumn, she pays for a ship, troops, and a cannon to help the Earl of Sutherland restore order in the far north. In 1556, she makes a progress through Inverness, Ross, Elgin, Banff, and Aberdeen. She employs an Italian military engineer from Siena, Lorenzo Pomerelli, for the whole of her regency and fortifies the coast. But her government has a weakness, and it is visible to everyone. Frenchmen are placed in charge of the treasury and the Great Seal. The French ambassador sometimes sits in the Privy Council. To her, these are competent officials she can trust. To the Scottish nobility, they are foreigners taking Scottish offices and Scottish money. She also misjudges the towns. In 1555, Parliament abolishes the office of Deacon of the Crafts in burgh councils, which strips the tradesmen of representation. The reaction is immediate. She travels to Perth to meet the objectors, and the law is repealed. In return, the craft guilds agree to help pay for defense. In October 1557, she takes an army to the border and orders it into England. The Scottish lords hold their own council at Eckford and go home instead. She can command, but she cannot always be obeyed. On religion, for years she does very little. Protestant preaching spreads through Scotland and she tolerates it. Part of this is calculation. She needs the reformers' support for her French policy. And while the Catholic Mary Tudor rules England, Scottish Protestants have nowhere else to turn. On religion, for years she does very little. Protestant preaching spreads through Scotland and she tolerates it. Part of this is calculation. She needs the reformers' support for her French policy. And while the Catholic Mary Tudor rules England, Scottish Protestants have nowhere else to turn. In December 1557, a group of lords sign a bond committing themselves to establish the Word of God and His congregation. They become known as the Lords of the Congregation. In April 1558 at St. Andrews, an 82-year-old former priest named Walter Milne is tried and burned for heresy on the orders of Archbishop John Hamilton. He is the last person burned for Protestant belief in Scotland. According to later accounts, the townspeople shut their shops rather than sell materials for the execution, and afterwards piled stones on the spot where he died. The burning does not stop the reformers. It gives them a martyr. Then, within a single year, the political ground moves under her. On April the 24th, 1558, her daughter marries the Dauphin Francis in Paris. On November 17th, 1558, Mary Tudor dies and Elizabeth becomes Queen of England. In France, Mary and Francis begin displaying the arms of England alongside their own, publicly claiming Elizabeth's throne. That gives Elizabeth a direct reason to interfere in Scotland, and it gives Henry II of France a reason to want Scotland firmly Catholic. Her tolerance ends. In January 1559, an anonymous notice known as the Beggar's Summons is posted on friary doors, warning the friars to get out. Fearing open disorder, she summons the Reformed preachers to appear before her at Stirling on 10th May 1559. They do not come alone. Men from Angus gather in Dundee to escort them, and on the 4th of May they are joined by John Knox, recently returned from exile after 18 months as a prisoner in the French galleys. Knox preaches at Perth. The crowd sacks the religious houses of the town and breaks open the tomb of James I. Mary of Guise marches on Perth, then has to negotiate when another Protestant force appears from the west at Coupar Muir. The defections begin. Two of her own negotiators, the Earl of Argyll and Lord James Stuart, the illegitimate son of James V and her stepson, abandon her and join the congregation. In July 1559, Edinburgh falls to the rebels and she withdraws to Dunbar. On 25th of July, the two sides sign the Articles of Leith, a truce promising religious tolerance. French professional troops arrive to reinforce her, and for a moment, she is winning. When her soldiers destroy the house of William Kirkcaldy, of Grange in Fife, Knox records her saying that her God is now stronger than John Knox's God, even in Fife. It is Knox's version of her words, written by an enemy, and it is one of the most quoted sentences she ever supposedly spoke. In November, the rebels are driven back to Stirling. But on 21st October 1559, the Lords of the Congregation issue an act suspending her from the Regency. She does not accept it. She considers resigning and returning to France, and her brother René, Marquis d'Elbeuf, is appointed to govern in her place. That plan is dropped. More French soldiers arrive instead. In January 1560, an English fleet enters the Firth of Forth. The French pull back into Leith, the port she has spent years fortifying. On 27 February 1560, the Lords sign the Treaty of Berwick with England, and Elizabeth sends an army north. In April, the siege of Leith begins. By now, she is seriously ill. She calls the condition dropsy, the old name for severe fluid retention. Modern historians think it was heart failure. In April, she notes that her legs have swollen and that she has become lame. Knox, who hated her, records the same swelling. She keeps working. Her enemies notice. The English ambassador in France, Nicholas Throckmorton, says she has the heart of a man of war. The English bishop, John Jewel, calls her a woman with a man's courage. An English assault on Leith is thrown back with heavy losses. On 12th of May, 1560, several leaders of the congregation come up to Edinburgh Castle and dine with her and the keeper of the castle, Lord Erskine. They discuss a settlement, including a plan for her to leave for France and meet Elizabeth on the way. The Lords repeat their central complaint, that Frenchmen hold Scottish offices. The talks collapse the next day when the French commanders in Leith are refused permission to come to the castle. She goes on ordering work on the castle defenses. Then her health breaks completely. For about 8 days her mind wanders, and on some days she cannot speak at all. On the 8th of June 1560, she makes her will. She sends for Lord James Stuart and for Arran, asks their forgiveness for anything she may have done against them, and asks that both armies leave Scotland and that her daughter be obeyed. They listen. They promise nothing. Mary of Guise dies at Edinburgh Castle on the 11th of June 1560. She is 44. Her body lies in state in the castle, wrapped in cloth, on a bed hung with black satin, attended by her ladies. Then it is wrapped in laid and placed in a coffin on a bier in St. Margaret's Chapel, inside the castle walls, where it stays for months. There is an autopsy the day after her death. Later centuries produced stories that she was poisoned by English agents. No evidence supports them, and none of her contemporaries suspected it. Everything she had fought against happens within weeks. In early July 1560, the Treaty of Edinburgh ends the siege. French and English troops both withdraw. The fortifications at Leith, Inchkeith, and Dunbar are pulled down. In August 1560, the Scottish Parliament abolishes the Latin Mass and rejects the authority of the Pope. Scotland becomes a Protestant country. On the 18th of March 1561, her coffin is carried out of Edinburgh Castle at midnight and shipped quietly to France. Her daughter attends the funeral at Fécamp in July 1561. She is buried at the convent church of Saint-Pierre-les-Dames in Reims, where her own sister Renée is abbess. A marble tomb is built for her, with a bronze figure of the queen in royal robes holding a scepter. The tomb is destroyed during the French Revolution. Of her 5 children, only one outlived her. In August 1561, Mary, Queen of Scots, comes home to Scotland at the age of 18, to a country that had changed religion while she was away, and to a government run by men who had rebelled against her mother. Her personal rule lasts 6 years. It ends in abdication, 19 years of imprisonment in England, and execution in 1587. Her son, James VI, inherits the English throne in 1603 and unites the 2 crowns his grandmother had spent her life keeping apart. For a long time, the standard account of Mary of Guise came from John Knox, who wrote about her as an enemy of God. Later historians have been more careful with the evidence. Rosalind Marshall describes a long, desperate, and finally hopeless struggle to hold Scotland as a French and Catholic kingdom for her daughter, fought by a woman who was intelligent, hard-working, and diplomatic, and who was never simply an instrument of the French king. Today, almost everyone remembers the daughter. Behind her was a woman who left her home country at 22, buried 4 of her 5 children, spent 18 years defending a throne that was not her own, and died inside a besieged castle, still refusing to surrender an office that had already been taken from her.